The story begins with how our main character wants to live. The girl swore that she would forgive no one and destroy everyone. Suddenly, unexpectedly, a bright light appeared from the darkness, and an unfamiliar voice asked the girl if she wanted to live. Hearing an unknown voice and seeing a bright light, the girl did not understand whether it was a dream or reality. An unfamiliar voice tells the girl that he will give her a second chance. A romantic fantasy novel called Kaladea Over the Cliff. The main character, Layla Fusenheit Moblin, was a talented writer. Layla overcomes many trials and eventually finds her happiness with the two main characters, Delkis Levelia Magafreso and Zenon de Senecchio Argafo. But there is another character, Celestia Stramante Financier. At first glance, Celestia had the perfect life. But in fact, the girl lost her mother early and since childhood fought for her place in the family between her stepmother and stepbrothers. Celestia remained collected and strong. The girl was the best in everything, in studies, in fencing. Celestia was considered tough and was called a villain. Suddenly, someone knocked on the door of Celestia's room. As it turned out, it was the maid who brought tea to the girl. Celestia looked at the maid and smiled at her, thanking her for the tea. And so, the main character moved into the body of Celestia because God told her that he would give her a second chance, so she is in the body of a princess. The girl is sure that this is definitely a chance for her. Celestia is determined to survive no matter the cost. After all, along with the girl, a book called Kaladea Over the Cliff arrived here. But there is one thing. This book was written by the main character, who moved into Celestia's body and will now take her place. It all started with the girl simply going out to have some fun with her fiancé, but the girl got tired and dozed off for a moment, imagining her happy future with her husband. But when she opened her eyes, she saw something she didn't expect. But when the girl opened her eyes, she saw rescuers. Suddenly, the girl felt dizzy and stopped hearing the voices of the rescuers. The writer lost consciousness without understanding anything. But when the girl woke up in the hospital, she was told terrible news. A friend sits next to the writer's couch and cries. As it turned out, the writer's husband died, and this was only the beginning of the nightmare. After all, another terrible news awaited the writer. The news was talking about some book, and then the writer realized that someone had appropriated her book and passed it off as their own. The girl felt as if she had fallen off a cliff because she had lost her beloved and also herself as an author. But the writer was given the opportunity to start life from scratch. But when reading the book, the writer begins to get angry. The girl is shaking with anger because she did not expect that someone would appropriate her book. The plot of Kaladea's book Over the Cliff begins with three heroes, Delkis, Layla, and Zenon, escaping from the war and growing up together in a monastery on the outskirts of the empire. They became friends and survived the hardest years together. 3 years later, the war ended, but unfortunately, fate decided to separate the friends. Before parting, Delkis and Layla promised each other that they would find each other. After everything calmed down, they waited for the day when they could meet again, but unfortunately, they grew up without knowing anything about each other. Layla wrote, believing that Delkis would one day read her lines, but no publishing house would accept her manuscripts. Delkis anticipated this and opened a women's column for authors, but no one brought their manuscripts there. Until Celestia suddenly appeared. Being a noble woman, she was the first to send a story, after which many girls began to do the same. So Layla was finally able to send her text, and Delkis immediately recognized her style and was sure that it was her. But then Celestia, Delkis's fiancé, intervened, realizing that the man was using her to find Layla. Eventually, Celestia blackmails Layla and steals her manuscripts. But even Celestia's intrigues could not defeat the true power of love. Celestia couldn't bear the thought of Delkis and Layla together. Celestia kills Delkis and is executed for it. After this, Zeno, who had also been in love with Layla since childhood, stays with her, and this is where the story ends. The writer understands that she just read some nonsense, not a plot, but the girl is glad that at least she managed to move in before Celestia began to threaten. The girl looks at the paper on which is written a threat that does not look like a threat at all. So, Celestia sat down at the table and began to rewrite the threat. But suddenly, the girl realized that this was wrong. Celestia stood up from her seat and realized that she had a purpose, and that it had not changed before her death or after her rebirth. The writer realizes that there is a mistake in the story she mentioned. The death of Delkis and Celestia and how Zenon became the protagonist after ending up with Layla. This is not the original plot that the girl wrote. The real protagonist was Delkis, and his partner was Layla. They were supposed to be together and have a happy ending, and the girl would fix it. because now Celestia herself will rewrite this history. One day, a book by Calliday suddenly appeared in front of the writer over the cliff. At first, the girl felt scared, because it exactly matched the one that was published in her world. The girl even thought about just getting rid of it, but it was a gift from God himself. You are probably wondering why such a suspicious thing is a gift from God. Now the writer will tell you everything. One of the peculiarities of this book is that words themselves appear on its pages, reflecting the passage of time that the writer is currently experiencing, so the book can show the near future, but does not allow you to see what is too far ahead. In addition, this book has another hidden, however. Like any power given by God, this one also has one slightly awkward moment. But fortunately, Celestia wrote the original work herself, so she remembers perfectly well what it was originally like. Yes, even though the girl does not remember the plagiarist's entire text in detail, the girl has enough knowledge that this ability will bring her great benefit. Leaving everything as is, without interfering with the template story, is simply unthinkable for the author of the original, but it is time to rewrite this story properly. Celestia, throwing aside the pile of work piled on her, left her library. She walked easily along the long corridor, heading towards the office of Duke Financier. But around the corner, Celestia was already being waited for by Kopfit Kuklet, the stepmother's second son, who hid like a mouse and tripped her up. The boy thought that Celestia would trip over the footstool and fall, but the princess saw the footstool and stepped on her brother's foot. Kopfit grabbed his leg and said something to Celestia's back, who was not going to expose herself. This incident was left behind. The Duke valued Celestia's intelligence, so he often discussed the future of the family with her. Having finished the conversation, Celestia returned to the library. The sun was shining unusually brightly outside. She mechanically looked out the window. But at that moment, Celestia looked away from the window. The girl saw one of the maids carrying a stack of cups and saucers almost up to her chin. But here's the problem. The maid stumbled right in front of Celestia. The maid lost her balance and fell to the floor. But the maid also ruined Celestia's outfit. Celestia, daughter of House Financier, was rumored to have grown up feeding on the very darkness of the empire. Having made a grave mistake right in front of Celestia, the maid, fearing retribution, panicked and abandoned her work in the mansion. The maid cried bitterly as Celestia left. But now, the writer thinks it would be better to prevent trouble before it happens. And so the maid stumbled, as she should have in the original story. The girl is about to meet the floor and break the cups and saucers. But Celestia is going to save the situation, thanks to a magic book. The writer has a hidden ability to edit the plot. When the girl opens the book to edit, the surrounding environment slows down, as if in slow-mo. The maid froze in place, as did the cups and saucers, while Celestia stood with a book in her hands. The writer rewrote the text, where it was previously written that the maid falls to the floor and the cups break, but the girl crossed out those words and wrote that she would catch the maid and the cups. This is how Celestia can change the plot, although there are limitations. When the maid opened her eyes, she was surprised that the princess had caught her, as well as the dishes. The maid thanked Celestia, who asked the girl to be more careful next time. Now, the maids understand that Celestia is very kind and not evil, as everyone says, but the writer knows that Celestia is not essentially a villain, because she is considered tough only because she is smart and capable of many things. But the plagiarist did not understand this and made Celestia a villain. The writer understands that if this is not corrected, she may die before she manages to bring the main characters together. But with this book, everything will go like clockwork. So she needs to start with the most important thing, which is to reunite Delquis and Layla. In the original, Delquis and Layla meet at a ball on the terrace, but in the plagiarism this scene was changed and Layla met Zeno there. But a writer cannot rewrite the distant past or future, so she needs to think everything through in advance. Suddenly, Celestia's gaze fell on the threatening letter. The girl remembered that she needed to write a threatening letter. In the original, Celestia sent Layla a letter threatening her to stop writing, but before Layla could read it, it was intercepted by Zeno, her eternal protector. After reading the letter, Zenon worries about Layla and decides to go to the ball. There he saw Celestia and Delquis dancing together, and a shocked Layla began to cry. Zenon consoled her. Words of support give Layla strength and courage. Layla has gathered the courage to go to Delquis, whom she meets by chance on the terrace, and if everything goes according to plan, their meeting will be perfect. The writer realizes that she needs to write the letter properly. A threatening letter is also a kind of essay, and while the girl was writing the letter, she remembered the deadlines. Celestia mentally apologized to Layla, realizing that she had no choice, because if she didn't send her a threatening letter, she wouldn't be able to introduce her to Delquis. Celestia will do everything to make that moment unforgettable, but the princess realizes that it is time to stop thinking about it and puts the letter away, starting to come up with a plan. Celestia tries to remember what happened at the ball in honor of her own debut, but suddenly the princess heard a noise. The girl turned and looked out the window, but there was nothing there, just as the sound itself was no longer audible. Celestia turned back and thought she had imagined it. The girl began to write a letter, but the noise that was there initially appeared again. The noise did not subside, on the contrary, it became louder outside the window. But Celestia couldn't stand it, and suddenly stood up from her seat and shouted what that noise was. There was a stranger in the window who didn't expect the girl to start screaming like that because of him. Celestia doesn't understand who is trying to climb through her window. The princess wanted to get closer to the window when suddenly a servant burst into the room and the girl looked at her. The maid tells Celestia that the crown prince has arrived at her mansion. The princess was shocked by such news. But then the writer realized that according to the plot, Delquis should not be here now because he was supposed to come after sending the threatening letter. Celestia quickly grabbed the book to see what happened. As it turned out, the plagiarist had changed the order of events, which is why Delquis arrived at the financier mansion so early. But the writer thought it was strange about the guy who tried to get into her, but nothing was written about him in the book. Celestia looked out the window and realized that the unknown person had disappeared. The maid tells Celestia that the crown prince has already arrived, but the girl realized that she had completely forgotten about him. The writer picked up a pen and wrote that she had managed to change her clothes before the prince's arrival. Suddenly, the room was illuminated by an unknown light. Meanwhile, the crown prince, who came to Celestia. But no one ever met the crown prince. Delquis understands that since no one met him, this is courage that is worthy of respect. The writer tells her husband that if she had the power, she could change the world, to which the man replied that he thought the same as a child. The girl replies that this is truly childish. Suddenly, the man tells the writer that this could be true anyway. The writer's husband tells her that there is power in her stories. The writer asked him if he really thought so, and her husband asked if he had ever lied to her. The girl laughed at her husband's words. Suddenly, the light went out and the writer stopped laughing. When the girl got up from her seat, she asked her husband what had happened. Suddenly, the writer looked at her husband and was horrified. The husband noticed this, smiled at the girl, and asked what happened. After hearing her late husband's words, Celestia woke up. Celestia sat up and looked at the floor. The girl tries to pull herself together, realizing that she must cope. When the writer got into this fantasy world, she immediately felt that the clothes here were uncomfortable, especially after living in the modern world. But fortunately, thanks to the power of the book, the girl did not have to personally fiddle with all these heavy, bulky outfits. It was enough to slightly correct the text, and the girl changed her clothes automatically, and even the sudden visit of the prince no longer caught her by surprise. Celestia left her room and walked towards the prince. The girl also wore comfortable shoes without heels. Soon there will be a debutante ball, an event that happens in the life of every noble girl only once, but in reality, this is the stage where the engagement of Celestia and Delquis will be officially announced. He understands this perfectly well, so he will not be able to avoid it. Celestia understands that if she does not appear at the ball, then Delquis will not come either, which means that the first meeting between him and Layla will fail. The imperial court expects that the engagement of Celestia and Delquis will become an example of an ideal couple. They cannot allow the slightest mistake. Celestia does not understand why the plagiarist decided to postpone Delquis's visit to another time, because in the original he also came to the mansion to rehearse a dance before the ball. It turns out that the visit itself could have been either before or after the threat. It does not matter. The writer assumes that the plagiarist simply wanted to ruin her story, but the girl also thinks that he hates her. Celestia opened the door to enter the hall. But the bright light blinded the girl, so at first she did not understand who it was. And so the light slowly fades, and the writer begins to see a familiar silhouette. Because of the familiar silhouette, Celestia thought it was her husband. But then the princess saw that it was the crown prince, not Jongwoo. The writer realized that Delquis was standing in front of her. Celestia realizes that she needs to pull herself together, because Delquis and Jongwoo are just similar. Celestia greeted the crown prince. Delcus tells Celestia that he doesn't remember them communicating like this since their childhood, and the man also noticed that the girl was in a good mood and suggested that it was because she made him stand under the scorching sun. Celestia sighed heavily. Delcus extended his hand. Suddenly, Delcus tells Celestia that they are not the kind of couple who will look into each other's eyes for a long time while listening to romantic music, so he asks the girl to start quickly so that they can finish it quickly. The writer understands that Delcus is such a boor, and then the girl remembered that she herself described him as such. Celestia asks Delcus to strictly follow her instructions. Delcus replies that he hopes that there is at least something behind the girl's words other than self-confidence. When Delcus and Celestia finished their dialogue, they held hands. The writer asks her wife to come to her for a minute. Young-woo asked his wife what happened. The girl replied that she was writing a scene where the main characters were dancing, but she couldn't imagine how to describe it. The girl also says that she needs something for inspiration. Young-woo replies that he should have told the girl about it right away. Suddenly, Young-woo grabbed his wife's hand. The man smiled at his wife and suggested that she just try, and the man also said that he would now show her his dancing power. Young-woo turned on some music so that the girl could better imagine the situation. The husband took his wife by the hand and began to dance with her. Young-woo and the writer danced happily with each other. There was music playing in the hall to ensure that the dance rehearsal went well. But suddenly Celestia grabbed Delcus by the waist. Celestia smiled and told Delcus that his back was a little stiff, and then the girl asked if he was nervous looking at her. Delcus asked Celestia to stop fooling around as the man would rather end it. At first, the writer wasn't sure if she could play the role of Celestia in front of him, but thanks to the way the girl got into the character while writing, everything went smoothly. If the girl had to portray Layla, Delcus, or Zenon, it wouldn't be difficult, because Calidea over the cliff is the part of her that holds the memories of Jong-woo. Delcus looked at Celestia and said that he would probably go. Celestia didn't answer and watched as Delcus got into the carriage. After Delcus got into the carriage, it moved off. The girl followed it with her eyes. But when the carriage left, Celestia turned around and left. Celestia heads to the estate, but suddenly the girl feels ill. Her breathing becomes labored, the world narrows, her vision darkens, and no matter how hard Celestia tries to breathe, it doesn't go away. Celestia doesn't understand what's happening to her, but the writer knows that Delcus is not Young-woo. They just look alike, but this is too cruel for the girl. Just as Celestia began to come to her senses after his death, just as she had made up her mind, she broke down again as soon as she saw his face. But the writer understands that she must come to her senses, that she must not drown in feelings, because the girl must at all costs bring this story to a happy ending. She must protect her memories with Young-woo. Suddenly, Celestia heard a meow. The girl looked down and saw a cat climbing towards her. Celestia didn't even know what to say about this incident, but she still decided to pet the cat, and then asked him if he felt sorry for her, and the cat responded with his usual meow. But suddenly the cat climbed onto Celestia's lap. Celestia smiled at the cat and came to her senses. The writer understands that Delcus is not Young-woo. He is not the man the girl once loved. His cold, ice-cold gaze made it clear to her, and no matter what he looks like, the girl should not give in to feelings, because she has only one goal in this world. Celestia pets the cat and thanks him because he helped her gain strength. The girl also says that next time she will definitely thank him, but the cat just meowed. The writer stood up from her seat and left, but before that she said goodbye to the cat. The cat simply meowed to the girl, who had already left. Suddenly, smoke appeared out of nowhere, and then a human leg. The man became interested in what the girl meant by the word thank. As it turned out, this man was Zenon, the head of the Magic Tower, who is now eagerly awaiting Celestia's gratitude. The beginning of a new sunny day. The nobles had a tea party on the street with a variety of desserts. People were chatting happily with each other on the street, and the children sat at the table and ate cakes. Celestia sat at the table and drank tea. Celestia has 2 official meetings scheduled today. The first morning meeting with relatives, and the second afternoon tea with young aristocrats. The morning reception was officially dedicated to the presentation of gifts in honor of the girl's debut, but the heroine of the occasion was simply seated in a corner and forgotten. And all because relatives from a distant province constantly tried to humiliate Celestia in order to elevate her stepmother Tayana and her sons Rune and Kopfit. After the death of Celestia's mother, who died on the front lines during the Revolutionary War, Duke Financier did not remain a widower for long, and then immediately took Tiana as his wife, making her the new mistress of the house. Little Celestia could not stand her father's betrayal and the oppressive atmosphere created by the new inhabitants of the house, so she often ran to her mother's grave, her only refuge. Of course, the stepmother didn't like this, and soon the Duke forbade Celestia from visiting the cemetery, having lost the only place where she could feel safe. Celestia felt an icy rage, but she did not give in. She secretly continued to visit her mother's grave. But Kopfit constantly interfered with her in this. Since then, Celestia first considered her stepmother and stepbrothers as enemies. But these people have nothing to do with Celestia. The girl will just sit in the corner and eat cookies until the time comes for the second meeting. Suddenly, Celestia realized that she had eaten all the cookies that were on her plate. But then someone approached the girl and handed her a plate of cookies. The man smiled and put some cookies on the table. Rune smiled at Celestia and greeted her. Rune offers Celestia to eat more cookies. Because the man brought cookies especially for her, the girl took a plate of cookies and thanked the man. Rune Hyolsha Financia was the only one who was kind to Celestia in this house. Rune himself, after giving the cookies to the girl, went to his mother. While everyone was preventing Celestia from going to her mother's grave, Rune kept her secret. And that night, thanks to Rune's help, the girl was able to secretly visit her mother. Celestia went to the cemetery to talk to her mother, and so the girl stopped in place. It was then, at the cemetery, that Celestia and Delquis met for the first time. Suddenly, the girl is interrupted from her thoughts by loud laughter. Darius praised Rune and told Tiana that she had raised a handsome son. Tiana agreed with her brother and replied that Rune was destined to become the head of their house. Rune asks his mother not to exaggerate because he still has a lot to learn. Darius laughed at his nephew's modesty. Celestia understands that listening to this flattery is unbearable, and the girl's ears will soon start bleeding from this sugary flattery. Suddenly, Darius clapped his hands and turned to his nephew. Darius asks Rune to show his fencing skills since he won it just recently. Rune tells his uncle that his skills are still too modest, while Celestia understands that due to Tiana's machinations, the girl known as the best sword in the Empire was unable to participate, which is why Rune won without much of a fight. Tiana approaches Rune and asks why he doesn't demonstrate his powers. The son replies that since his mother asks so, he will not refuse her. Rune looked at the guests and began to choose an opponent for himself. But the man understands that there is no suitable opponent here. Even the youngest one started to worry. The child looks away and says that he feels sick and that he seems to have overeaten. Celestia smiled, realizing that this would not help Kopfit avoid a sword sparring match with his brother. When Rune heard Kopfit's answer, he smiled. Celestia understands how pleasant her tea is. But suddenly the girl heard her name. Celestia looked at her brother, who said her name. Rune offers Celestia to finish the duel they were unable to have back then. Mother approaches Rune and asks him not to fight with Celestia, as it is inappropriate now. Rune removes his mother's hand and replies that he wants to finish the unfinished business, and that the guests will be able to enjoy the spectacle. Tiana reminds her son that Celestia is now engaged to the crown prince, so they can't have her getting hurt before the ball. The man approached Tiana and confirmed his sister's words, adding that Celestia should no longer swing swords. Darius also added that even if Celestia was previously called the best sword of the Empire, that is already in the past, which means that now the best swordsman is Rune. When Celestia heard the man's words, she suddenly stood up from her seat and shouted what kind of nonsense he was talking about. And then Celestia realizes that she accidentally broke down. The girl understands that she urgently needs to calm down. The guests looked at the girl who sat down. Celestia sat quietly in place, pretending that nothing had happened. But after a couple of seconds, the guests began to laugh at Celestia's words. Celestia understands that the guests have become completely insolent because she is the best swordswoman in the Empire, no matter what anyone says. The girl wrote it herself, and now, with her own eyes, she sees how her work is being distorted. Celestia clearly remembers that she never wrote such nonsense, so the planter is to blame for everything, but now the girl will show everyone who is really the best sword of the Empire. Suddenly, Celestia agreed to Rune's proposal. The girl stood up from her seat and approached the man. Kopfit was shocked by what Celestia was doing. Tiana was angry at the girl, but Darius didn't understand what was happening. Celestia tells Rune that she accepts his challenge. The girl is ready to fight Rune because she knows that she will definitely win. Rune smiled at Celestia and waited for their duel. But suddenly, Celestia realized what she had just done. And then the girl realizes that it is not Celestia. After all, the girl only looks like Celestia. In fact, she is Jigen, an aspiring writer who just sat at home and wrote stories, so of course, the girl doesn't even know how to hold a sword. Celestia understands that she should have ignored this stupid provocation, but she was so angry that she agreed without thinking, so the girl is now going to get out of it with the help of a book. But suddenly, the girl realizes that she didn't take the book with her. Celestia didn't take the book with her because she didn't want to arouse suspicion among people about the tea party. Celestia doesn't understand what to do now because she has never held a sword in her life, at most a knife when she cut kimchi. But the girl understands that she has no choice. Rune tells Celestia that since the Crown Prince might get angry, they will have to fight carefully so that no one gets hurt. Celestia didn't feel any better after Rune's words. The girl understands that she is about to go crazy, and so the guests froze in anticipation. The sword tournament between Celestia and Rune is about to begin. The girl is already thinking that she should pretend to be crazy and run to the mansion for the book, but suddenly Rune turns to her. Rune apologized to Celestia for dragging her into this, and the man also asked the girl not to worry because he would be extremely careful and would definitely not hurt her. Celestia looked at Rune with displeasure and hoped that he would try not to hurt her. Suddenly, Darius asked Celestia and Rune if they were ready. Realizing that they were ready, the man allowed the fight to begin. It didn't take 5 seconds before Rune lunged at Celestia with his sword. Celestia doesn't understand why Rune is attacking her like that, but after pulling herself together, the girl realizes that it's time to start. Suddenly, Celestia was able to block the blow with her sword. Opening her eyes, the girl looks at Rune. And then Celestia realizes that she was able to reflect Rune's sword. Rune was shocked that Celestia was able to do this. Pulling herself together, Celestia moved her sword forward. The girl went on the offensive, while Rune tried to reflect the girl's sword. The writer realizes that Celestia's body remembers her fighting skills. Rune doesn't understand where Celestia got such strength from. Celestia realized that the man had opened up, which meant the fight could be finished. And so Celestia was able to neutralize Rune. Rune looks at his sword, which was literally ripped out of his hands. Suddenly, Celestia brought her sword closer to Rune's throat. The girl tells Rune that she is sorry, but it seems she is still the best sword in the Empire. But in reality, Celestia was very scared and afraid, and she was also glad that the fight ended so quickly. The guests saw how Celestia neutralized Rune. Literally everyone is shocked that Rune lost to Celestia. Kopfit is horrified that the girl was able to win his brother. And then Tiana realizes that Celestia is still the best swordswoman in the Empire. The maid smiled at Celestia's victory. Rune looked at the floor. He had nothing to say. But suddenly, the man raised his head and smiled at Celestia. Rune tells the girl that it was a great battle, and the man also notes that she is very talented and extends his hand to her. Celestia thanked Rune and shook his hand. Rune wasn't particularly happy about Celestia's victory, but he still had to keep a smile on his face. Suddenly, Kopfit ran up to Rune and told him that he was cooler and accused Celestia of cheating. The guests understand that it was a great performance. They even felt sorry that they watched it for free. Darius himself did not expect that Celestia would be able to defeat Rune. Suddenly, Darius agrees with Kopfit and then asks the guests if Runu was really better than Selena, and the guests agree with the man. Of course, the guests would have continued to admire Rune, but then Darius was interrupted by Celestia. The girl smiled at the guest and said that it was time for her to go to the next meeting and left. Celestia returned to the mansion as she was supposed to after tea. After entering the mansion, Celestia went to her room. When the girl entered the room, she immediately ran to her book. Celestia picked up the book and began to hug it, saying that she would never part with it again. Opening the book, the girl looks at what is now written in it. Celestia understands that the text has changed because it is different from the original, but there is nothing important here. So the girl thinks that there should be no problems. It's just that she became the opponent instead of Kopfit, and she also won. Suddenly, the maid knocked on Celestia's door and asked if she could come in to help the girl change her clothes because it was time for tea, and the girl replied that she could. Celestia crossed out in the book that thanks to Arlene's help she was able to change clothes. Suddenly, a bright light appeared in the room again. Celestia left the room and was about to go to tea with the maid. Suddenly, Celestia bumped into someone. Celestia immediately falls to the floor, as does the stranger. The girl grabbed her head and began to rub the bruise. Suddenly, the girl opened her eyes and asked the stranger if she was okay. The stranger smiled awkwardly and replied that she was fine, but Celestia realized that it was Layla sitting in front of her. Golden hair flowing like thin rays of the sun, eyes the color of spring leaves, full of new life. Cheeks and lips are a delicate scarlet color like ripe peaches. Layla looks at the floor and apologizes to Celestia because she appeared before her in such a state. Celestia understands that Layla is very sweet. The girl is so glad that Layla appeared before her like this, because this is how the girl imagined her. Suddenly Layla turned to Celestia. Celestia tells Layla that she was supposed to be escorted straight to the tea party and then asks the girl why she is wandering around the hallway alone. Layla looks at the floor and is about to answer what's wrong. Celestia is paying attention and wonders why Layla isn't at tea right now. Layla tells Celestia that she is lost. She also adds that Celestia's house is very big and beautiful. Celestia, however, understands that this is very sweet. Initially, the servants were supposed to accompany Layla to the place where the tea party was taking place. But because of the sudden duel with Rune, all the servants came running to watch the fight. It's surprising that Layla even got here. Celestia tells Layla that it's good that they met before the girl got completely confused, so Celestia asks the girl to go to tea with her. Layla didn't respond to Celestia's words. The girl is calmly angry at the mistress of the house. Layla thinks that maybe Celestia is mad at her for wandering around the house without permission, but the girl understands that if she wasn't kicked out, then everything is probably okay. Celestia noticed that Layla was sad for some reason and already thought that it was all because of the cold answer. But with the help of the book, Celestia wants to find out what Layla is thinking. After learning what the problem was, Celestia giggled and realized that she would have to give Layla more cookies later. To tea at Celestia's mansion, 4 guests brought Celestia beautiful stones, and Layla brought a feather. Rena tells Celestia that these are their modest gifts for her. Sophia added that these are decorations made of the rarest jewels, especially for Celestia, the future pride of their empire. Celestia smiled and thanked the girl, while Layla understood that she should have brought some decorations too. Celestia tells the girls that she has also prepared return gifts for the girls, but they will take it before leaving. Everyone wants to please Celestia, and this is understandable because at this ball her engagement to Prince Delcus will be officially announced. For all the girls, this is a chance to change their destiny. Celestia will be next to the prince, and getting into her inner circle means attracting the attention of high society. Suddenly, Rena started talking about Layla's gift, who gave Celestia a writing pen. Rena says there are rumors that the Fusenheit household is having financial difficulties. Rena also says that the current Baroness Fusenheit is urgently looking for a husband for her daughter, and then Rena suggests that Layla get married quickly in order to revive the family line, but Layla did not respond to this. Celestia understands that gossip about Layla has begun. Of course, it is unpleasant to hear this in real life, but the girl added it to the book for the sake of drama, but in real life it sounds too cruel. Suddenly, Celestia thinks to check the text in the book. Since that plagiarist changed everything, he definitely changed something here too. Celestia opened the book to see what changes the plagiarist had made. But when the girl began to read what was written in the book, she was horrified. Anna giggles and answers Rena that Layla has no time for this. She pretends to be a great writer, sits at home and scribbles some strange things. Rena wonders what the young lady from the Fusenheit family is doing here. Did she really want to see what a real reception looks like? Anna replies that Layla will later go to that strange writer from the back alley, Halliday. Celestia doesn't understand what scribbles and a writer from the back alley mean. The girl is already starting to get annoyed by the plagiarist. In the original scene, the girls humiliated Layla, while simultaneously extolling Khalidia's novels and emphasizing her virtues. The girls, not even suspecting that the author of Khalidia was in front of them, showered him with laudatory odes, and this became the ironic moment of the scene. Rena praises Khalidia's work, saying how amazing it is, and it's no wonder the entire imperial court is crazy about it, while Layla realizes that she is so good. Celestia still doesn't understand who is behind this, but she can say one thing for sure: a plagiarist insults the art of writing itself. And he does this without any logic. He just found and rewrites the girl's work. Suddenly, Celestia tells the girls that she is familiar with Khalidia's work. Celestia says that even though they call him a backwater writer, his works have a huge positive impact on the empire. They lift spirits and give hope. Words can be a source of comfort, knowledge, and even entertainment. It is amazing how differently words can affect people. Celestia asks the girls if this is not the true power of literature, and then says that thanks to authors like these, the future of our empire becomes brighter. Layla listened attentively to Celestia, not daring to interrupt her. Suddenly, Celestia asked the girls that maybe they should also try themselves in literature, and the girls asked Celestia again. Celestia replies that why not, and asks the girls to imagine what fruits the wisdom of a woman of the empire would bear if she were to lie on the page of books. The girl also added that she would be happy to read the works of the guests. The girls asked Selena again if she was really going to read, since the girls hadn't written since the academy. Suddenly, Celestia asks Layla to write too. Celestia asked Layla if she would write too, and the girl added that she would be interested to take a look. Layla replied that she was writing, but it was clear that nothing was ready, yet Celestia smiled and asked the girl not to rush, but to show when everything was ready. Layla smiled and agreed to show her story when she was ready. And so the tea party ended. Evening came. Celestia and Layla stood at the windows of the mansion. Layla tells Celestia that it was a wonderful tea party, and the princess replies that she is glad that the girl liked everything. Celestia tells Layla that she will take her there because she might get lost, but the girl replies that she misunderstood everything. Layla tells Celestia that she doesn't usually get lost, it's just that the house is big, but Celestia doesn't listen to the girl. She thinks about too many changes, and even when the girl makes notes in the book, she is still afraid that all the changes will go too far. Celestia has already begun to think that due to frequent changes, Layla and Delquis may not meet at the ball, but Layla asks Celestia to listen to her and believe her. Suddenly, Layla noticed a thread that was pulled tight and could cause a trip, but it was too late to tell Selena about this because she touched this thread and tripped over it. Celestia is shocked that for the first time in her life, she didn't look where she was going and has already tripped over something. Layla saw Celestia fall and ran to her. Suddenly, Layla screamed Celestia's name. After a couple of minutes, Celestia opened her eyes. The girl closed her eyes in pain. But when Celestia opened her eyes, she saw that Layla was hugging her. Celestia sat up and tried to bring Layla to her senses while asking how she was. Celestia looked down the hallway, wondering what had happened. Suddenly, the girl saw a frightened Kopfit. The boy runs away, shouting that he didn't think it would go this far. Celestia was terribly angry at Kopfit because of whom Layla suffered. Suddenly, Layla placed her hand on Celestia's hand. Layla sat up and asked Celestia how she felt. Celestia replies that thanks to her she is safe, and the flood asks the girl how she is, if she is hurt. Layla replies that everything is fine. She was just surprised by such a trap in the corridor. Celestia apologized for this. Suddenly, Layla's leg began to hurt, and Celestia noticed it. Celestia asked the girl if she was hurt. Layla replies that she thinks she twisted her ankle but asks Celestia not to worry about it. But Celestia didn't wait long and did something that Layla didn't expect at all. Celeste picked up Layla in her arms. The girl tells Layla that she will now take her to the doctor. Celestia understands that nothing can happen to Layla. A couple of minutes later, Celestia took Layla to the doctor. Layla sits on the bed while the doctor bandages her leg. Celestia asks the doctor what Layla's condition was. The doctor replies that Layla only suffered damage to her left ankle and a few more bruises, but basically everything is fine. As long as the girl stays calm, everything will be fine. Celestia asks the doctor if anything terrible had happened to Layla. Layla tells Celestia that it's good that things aren't that serious, and Celestia agrees with the girl. Suddenly, Layla asks the doctor when her leg would be completely healed. The doctor doesn't know how to answer the girl's question more gently. But then Celestia couldn't stand it any longer and ordered the doctor to tell everything as it was. The doctor replies that the point is that with proper care, everything will be fine. Layla will be able to walk. But alas, it won't be possible to dance at the debutante ball. Celestia asked the doctor again if she was sure of her words, and he confirmed it. Celestia is horrified that Layla won't be able to dance, of course. Kopfit is a character written to throw a spanner in Celestia's wheel, but who knew he would go this far? Celestia realizes that Kopfit wanted to avenge his brother, whom she humiliated by winning a duel. So Kopfit, as always, decided to set a trap for Celestia in order to get even and humiliate her. But in the end, Layla suffered instead of Celestia. Even Kopfit did not expect this. Suddenly, Layla says that it's okay. Celestia asked what it meant. Layla replied that it was good that it wasn't the girl who fell, but she. Layla smiled at Celestia and said that the main thing is that she is okay, because the girl knows how important this ball is for the princess. Celestia got angry because of the girl's words. Suddenly, the princess asks Layla how she can say that. Layla doesn't understand what's happening. Celestia tells Layla that she didn't ask to be saved. Celestia also tells Layla that she is missing out on a once-in-a-lifetime chance to dance at the ball. The girl understands that she must bring this story to a happy ending. Celestia looked at Layla, waiting for her answer. Layla burst into tears and apologized to Celestia. Layla says that she didn't want Celestia to feel guilty and is also genuinely glad that Celestia is okay. Celestia realizes that everything is not going as she wanted because the girl is angry with herself but takes it out on Layla. Celestia apologizes for yelling at Layla, who just saved her from injury, but the girl promises that she will definitely make it up to her. Layla asks not to do this, but Celestia said that she will fix everything anyway. Celestia turns her back on Layla and leaves to go about her business. Layla looked at Celestia's back. Celestia left the room, leaving Layla alone with the doctor. Suddenly, Celestia took a book out of her pocket. Having opened the book, the girl looks for the right page. Celestia wrote in the book that Layla recovered, and the next day her leg was almost as good as new. Putting the book away, Celestia squatted down, calling herself stupid. The next sunny day at Celestia's mansion, Celestia sat at the table, sighing heavily. The maid noticed that after tea, Celestia became quite despondent. The girl thinks how to cheer up the princess. Suddenly, the maid had an idea on how to make Celestia smile. Arlene called out to Celestia, who responded sadly. The maid came up to the princess's table and said that she would now take her somewhere. As it turned out, Arlene brought Celestia to the fair. There were a lot of people at the fair who came to have fun. Celestia reminds the maid that she wanted to show her something, but the princess was outraged that the maid decided to bring her to the fair. Arlene tells Celestia that there is a cafe with very tasty tile pies, and they also say that if you bite into a piece, it immediately melts in your mouth, and the maid also says that the pies are made by hand, and therefore you need to come early and get in line. Suddenly, Celestia remembered that this was one of the episodes in her book. The writer and Jung-woo worked together part-time at the cafe that sold this dessert, and the girl added it to the novel because this memory was so warm and joyful. After all, on that day, the writer tried blueberry pie for the first time. That day, the writer was eating a pie while her husband watched. Celestia asked Arlene how she knew the girl liked blueberry pies. Arlene replies that there was a piece of paper on Celestia's desk, and on it, in huge letters, was written about blueberry pie. Suddenly, the maid asked Celestia that since she knew about this cafe, it means she was going to eat there. The girl confirmed this. But really, it was just a plan in case the cafe opened and there was a rush, and Celestia had been so busy lately that she had completely forgotten about blueberry pie. Celestia tells Arlene that she is very pleased that she decided to please her with blueberry pie, and the maid replies that she has served her since childhood, so of course she will please the princess. Suddenly, Arlene took Celestia's hand. Arlene smiled at the princess and said that they needed to hurry, otherwise everything would be sold out. So the girls went out for some blueberry pie. While walking around the fair, Celestia and Arlene looked for a cafe. Only Celestia kept getting distracted. The girl approached the counter with jewelry and thought about what to give Layla. Just as Celestia and Arlene moved away from one counter, Celestia saw a counter with food. The girl looked at the food and thought what to take. Suddenly, Celestia saw another counter, but this time with fresh vegetables and fruits. Celestia stands with food in her hands, and Arlene realizes that she was able to lift the girl's spirits. The girl understands that after she woke up in this body, she has never rested, and so she did not notice how carried away she became. Suddenly, Arlene saw something in the distance. As it turned out, they had already arrived at a cafe that sells blueberry pie. Celestia was shocked by such a long line, but Arlene replied that the pies in this cafe are so delicious that people come running. Arlene suggests that Celestia take a rest because she can stand up for her, but Celestia herself refused this idea and replied that she would stand up for her because the longer you wait, the tastier it seems. An hour passes, but it is not yet Arlene and Celestia's turn. 2 hours pass and the girls still haven't received the pie. 3 hours pass. Celestia asked Arlene if they were close. The maid confirmed it. And now, finally, it was Arlene and Celestia's turn. In fact, Celestia wasn't going to eat it, but these pies have such happy memories associated with them, so the girl really wants to try them. Suddenly, the pastry chef comes out to Celestia and Arlene and apologizes to them, and then says that the previous customer bought all the remaining pies. The pastry chef apologizes profusely for the long wait, and Celestia and Arlene are shocked that they just stood in line. Celestia asks the girl who bought everything, and she points to the man in the black cloak. Suddenly, Celestia called out to the stranger in the cloak. The stranger looked at the girl, who was very angry with him. Celestia tells the stranger that he needs to think about others and then calls the man greedy. The stranger did not respond to the girl's words, but ignored her. The stranger turned away, and Celestia became angry at being ignored. Celestia understands that with one stroke of her pen she could take all the pies away from the stranger. The girl already wanted to teach the man a lesson, but Celestia lowered her pen, no longer intending to do anything. The girl feels sorry that they waited so long, but the girl didn't plan to eat them, and the day turned out to be fun, so she forgives the stranger. Celestia was about to leave when suddenly the stranger looked at the girl. Suddenly, a stranger approached the girl. The stranger extended his hand, but Celestia withdrew her hand. Celestia asked the stranger what he wanted, and he asked the girl to give him her hand. Celestia carefully extended her hand to the man. Suddenly, the stranger put something in Celestia's hand. When the man removed his hand, Celestia saw that he had given him a pie. The man smiled at Celestia and said that he really needs them, but asked the girl to accept this pie. But before Celestia could answer, the stranger turned around and left. The man walks away with a smile on his face. Celestia was shocked by such impudence. Arlene tells the girl that she will still be able to try the pie. Celestia smiled at the maid and asked if maybe they should go back to the carriage. Arlene agreed. Celestia can't remember where she saw this man. It's evening. Cafes and shops are already closing. The girls are walking around the city, even though it's already getting dark. Lily says she wanted to try the new blueberry pie, but didn't have time. Sophia replies that she didn't have time to buy it either, but she really wants to try it. Suddenly, someone asked the girls if they wanted to try some blueberry pie. The girls confirmed this. The stranger said that he bought some pies in reserve, but he didn't like them at all. The man says he feels bad about throwing away the pies, but if the girls go with him, he will let them try the tile pies. Several days have passed since Celestia and Arlene returned from the market. During this time, Celestia generously thanked Layla. Celestia also forced Kopfit to go to Layla's mansion and apologize in person. After Celestia corrected the plot, Layla quickly recovered, and events again followed the desired scenario. The girl feels like she can finally take a break, but suddenly someone knocked on Celestia's room. The maid came to Celestia and said that guests had come to see her. After Arlene's words, the girl realized that she definitely wouldn't be able to rest. The girl searches the guest room to find out who has come to see her. But it's strange that anyone came to Celestia now, because no one should be visiting at such a time. The maid opens the door for Celestia. When the girl saw Celestia, she was excited. Celestia realized that Lisha, who had recently been to tea, had come to see her. Lisha apologizes to Celestia for coming so suddenly. Celestia tells the girl that everything is fine and asks her to tell her what happened. Licia sighed heavily and was about to tell the reason for her visit. The girl asked Celestia if she had seen Rena. Celestia didn't answer the girl. Livia tells Celestia that after tea she decided to meet with Rena. Celestia asked Lisha what happened to Rena. Lisha tells Celestia that Rena is missing. Celestia was shocked by the girl's answer because there was no such plot. Lisha says that because a new blueberry pie place had recently opened, it was crowded, and she also says that she and Rena went there that day. Rena asks Lisha to sit down because the girl looked unwell, so Rena wanted to buy them a blueberry pie herself. Rena says that Lisha really wanted to try them, so the girl will buy them now and come. Lisha listened to Rin and sat on the bench, waited for her for several hours, but she never returned. Then Lisha saw Celestia walking past, so the girl thought that maybe she saw Rena. And then Celestia realizes that this is the blueberry pie incident. I agree with the plot. The attackers lure people by promising pies that supposedly remain. These are kidnappings aimed at commoners who did not have time to buy anything. In a normal situation, no one in their right mind would follow a stranger just for the sake of a pie, but if a person stood in line for a long time and left empty-handed, disappointment will take over, and he will easily succumb to the sweet persuasion of the kidnappers. Celestia thinks how Rena could get caught. She is a noble woman. But then the girl realizes that she did not want to return empty-handed and decided to get a piece and fell into a trap. Suddenly, Celestia placed her hand on Licia's shoulder. Celestia asks the girl not to worry because they will do everything to find Rena and bring her back. Rena is an important character. In the future, she should become an ally of Layla, so Celestia is obliged to save her. Suddenly, something rustled in the bushes. Celestia peeked out from the bushes and began to look around. If everything goes according to the book's plot, the kidnappers will appear here soon. The book's power only works in a small radius, so in order to change the course of events, Celestia must be nearby. Suddenly, Celestia saw the kidnappers, which made her very happy because it meant that everything was going according to the plot. One of the men tells the other that the catch is rich today. The stranger replies that it was as if they had been hunting. The man says that this is hunting, but for money. Suddenly, a stranger asked the man what they do with people if they make so much money from it, and the man replied that they sell people abroad. The girl was shocked when she heard the man's words. Celestia couldn't even imagine that something like this could happen. But now it became clear to Celestia that not only commoners were being kidnapped, but nobles, and even sold abroad. But the girl also understood that if she dealt with this, the consequences would be dire. Suddenly, the man tells the stranger that he has had enough of catching people for today, and he asks the reason, to which he is told that they have been too active, and that it seems the imperial court has begun to suspect something. Celestia was shocked that even Delcus moved. The man tells the stranger that he needs to quickly sell the goods and disappear. Suddenly, Celestia stepped on a branch, which immediately crunched. Celestia realized that she was now finished. The man, hearing the crunch of a branch, asked who was in the forest. Celestia began to panic because she realized that she had been noticed. Suddenly, the man ran towards the sound. Having removed the leaves of the bush with a knife, the man looks to see who is hiding there. As it turned out, it was a simple rabbit. The rabbit looked at the strangers with fear. The stranger says it's just colic. The man replies that they have to go. And so the kidnappers leave the scene. Celestia turned back into a human. But here's the problem. Someone grabbed Celestia and covered her mouth with their hand. Celestia doesn't move, waiting for the man to loosen his grip. The stranger looks around to see if there is anyone nearby or not. When the man saw that there was no one nearby, he let the girl go. The stranger smiled at Celestia and said that everything was fine now. Suddenly, Celestia pushed the stranger away from her. The girl summoned her sword to protect herself from the stranger. Celestia held a sword to the man's throat to keep him from approaching her. Celestia looks at the stranger and asks who he is. The stranger smiled and raised his hands. The stranger stroked the sword with his finger and said that he never thought he would see the sword summoning with his own eyes. In this world, magic exists, but not everyone has it. Only the ruler of the magic tower, Zenon de Senecchio Argafo, and his family are able to truly control magic. There is only one exception, the women of the Finyanshe clan, who are able to summon a sword from empty space, although compared to Argafo, their power is modest. But for the warriors of the Finyanshe clan, it is a powerful weapon passed down from generation to generation. Celestia tells the man to stop talking, since judging by his clothes, the stranger is in league with them, but the girl wonders why he helped her. When the stranger heard Selena's words, he immediately laughed at her, and the girl asked why he was laughing. The stranger apologized for his loud laughter. The man says he didn't expect his outfit to raise such suspicions. Pulling down his hood, the man smiled and said that those who hide their identity usually look pretty much the same. Celestia was shocked when she saw the man's face. Suddenly, Celestia asked the stranger who he was and why he was always hanging around her. Celestia remembers the incident with the window and how she met a man at the fair. Suddenly, Celestia puts her sword to the stranger's throat and tells him not to think that by taking off his cloak, he has stopped being suspicious. The man apologizes for being rude, but when he heard rumors that Celestia had changed, curiosity got the better of him. Suddenly, the stranger wants to say something to Celestia, but the girl is prepared. The man came closer and said that he was not Celestia's enemy, and then the stranger took Celestia's sword into his hands. The stranger put the weapon to his face and winked at Celestia, saying that she would soon understand that he was not his enemy. Celestia became embarrassed and asked what the man was doing. Suddenly, Celestia's sword disappeared before our eyes. Because Celestia was confused, the sword accidentally responded, and then Celestia remembered why she came to the forest. Celestia looked at the place where the strangers had stood before. But the people managed to escape while Celestia was talking to Zeno. Celestia realizes that because of Zeno, she lost track of them, but she needed to follow them to the lair and save Rena with the help of the book's power. Zeno looks at Celestia and says that he doesn't know what's going on, but he understands that the girl is worried. Celestia tells Zeno that the plan fell apart because of him. The man tells Celestia that if her goal is to catch those who escaped, then he can help. Celestia looked at the man and did not understand how he was going to help her. Meanwhile, the kidnappers are still in the forest. The stranger did not stand on ceremony for long and threw the girl into the carriage. The stranger understands that they need to get out quickly, and here they still have to mess around. The man sighs heavily, wondering where this new guy is, since he was ordered to guard the carriage. Suddenly the man called out to his friend. The kidnapper was angry with the new guy and asks him where he was all this time. And then the man shows the girl he caught. The stranger says that they didn't need to catch anyone. The new guy answers that he knows, but it was the girl who was following them, so they had to catch them. The bandit says that then let him grab her and let's go. Suddenly the man leaned towards Celestia's ear. As it turned out, it was Zeno who asked Celestia if he could help her. The girl confirmed this, because now she would be able to get into their lair. The real intruder is knocked out. Zeno tells Celestia that he was glad to help, and then the man asked Celestia if she believed him now. The girl replied that we'll see. Zeno sighed heavily because he didn't expect such an answer. Suddenly, Zeno tells Celestia that even without her participation, the Empire would have sorted things out, and he does not understand why the girl got involved in this matter. As Celestia climbed into the carriage, Zeno smiled and wished Celestia good luck. The carriage sets off. Celestia goes to the kidnapper's lair. Despite the difficulties, everything seems to be going as it should. If we can save Rena and put everything back in its place, everything will be fine. Celestia is confident that she will be able to fix everything and the perpetrators will pay for their actions. Meanwhile, at Delcas's estate, a man came to Delcas and said that the criminals were now moving through the forest and then were going to illegally transport people along the river. The man asked Delcas what they would do in this situation. Delcas tells the man that he is going to personally lead the operation. Night fell, but the girl still had not arrived at the lair of the intruders. Suddenly, the carriage stopped in the forest. The attackers had already exited the carriage. Celestia sleeps in the carriage thinking that they haven't arrived yet. But suddenly, the stranger opened the door and shouted that it was time to go out, which caused Celestia to wake up. Celestia smiled at the man, asking if they had already arrived, although the girl herself knew the answer. The girl stood up from her seat and began to get out of the carriage. When Celestia saw the lair, she was shocked. The kidnapper's lair is so big that Celestia is speechless. The girl understands that she is in a remote place that is difficult to find, and by the time Celestia arrived, it was already getting dark. Celestia realizes that it was a good thing she pretended to be a victim. Suddenly, someone shouted at the girl, asking why she was dragging herself along, so she got scared. Celestia apologized to the stranger. The girl realized that there was one man standing in front of him, not two. Celestia looked around and realized that he was nowhere to be found. The girl asks the stranger if there weren't two of them. The stranger replies that he has disappeared somewhere again. Celestia understands that Zeno has left, although he himself said that he was not with them, and the only thing they have in common is their clothes. Celestia was brought to her cell and locked in. When the girl was locked in, the attacker ordered everyone to sit quietly. Celestia watches as the man walks away. Suddenly, the girl heard crying and turned to see who was crying. As it turned out, everyone who was sitting with the girl in the cage started crying. Even one of the people sitting said that they would all die. Celestia didn't expect everyone to suddenly start crying. Celestia asks people not to cry because the Empire will send help soon. The man asked Celestia why she was so sure, because no one would save ordinary people. Celestia smiled awkwardly, understanding why they thought that. After the war, the Magafreso Empire had not yet won the full trust of the people, although it was called revolutionary. In fact, it was a civil war that lasted 3 years. In order to strengthen its position and prove its strength, Delquis personally led a detachment of knights. This operation should not only dispel rumors and mistrust among ordinary people, but also strengthen the reputation of Delquis Levelia Magafreso. Suddenly, Celestia tells people that she is a knight of the Imperial Order, but in fact, this is not true. People immediately rejoiced because they were saved. Celestia asks people to be quiet, otherwise they might hear. Celestia says that the Empire cares about every citizen, so if the prisoners trust the girl, she will save them. The prisoners smiled because now they trusted Celestia. The girl sighed with relief because they believed her. Suddenly, someone called the prisoners naive. Conclusion asks people if they really believed Celestia. The man asks who would believe that Celestia is a knight of the Imperial Court. Now, everyone thinks Celestia is suspicious. And then the man asks what Celestia can do if her hands are tied. Hearing the prisoner's words, Celestia smiled, and suddenly the girl broke the ropes, and all thanks to the fact that Zeno did not tie her too tightly. When Celestia was freed, the man was shocked and even scared, but now he definitely believes. The kidnapper's lair is joined by torches. There were also torches literally everywhere, which was very convenient. After all, Celestia is wandering around the lair and looking for Rena. Thanks to the book, Celestia was able to escape from the cage, but the girl does not know where Rena is. Suddenly, Celestia heard someone talking. When the girl walked a little forward, she saw the light burning from the room. Celestia walked to the door to better hear the conversations. And then Celestia realized that the kidnapper was talking to the boss. The man asks the boss if they are sure they are safe now, as there are rumors that the Empire is actively searching for them. The boss first asked the man how he got to them with such a character, and then said that there was no need to worry because everything was going according to plan, as the fortune teller said. Celestia heard perfectly well what their boss said about the fortune teller. The boss says that the fortune teller said that the Knights of the Empire would appear only at sunrise, so they would have time to take everyone out and escape, and the ship is already on its way. Celestia remembers that according to the original plot, Delcus arrives after dawn and saves everyone, but the plagiarist changed everything. Suddenly, Celestia heard someone's footsteps. Of course, the girl would like to listen to what they were talking about, but she had to run away. After that, Celestia searched the entire building in search of Rena. Celestia doesn't understand where Rin is, and the girl also doesn't understand why the kidnappers chose such a huge building for their base. But things are going badly, because the book does not give any clues as to where Renu is, and the girl is also afraid that suddenly there is no mention of her there at all, and the girl will not be able to change the plot. Suddenly, someone threw a precious stone, and of course, this gem ended up in Celestia's head. Someone was screaming throughout the cage that he wanted to go home. Suddenly, Rena saw Celestia in front of her. Renu apologizes for hitting Celestia in the head with the gem. The girl says that because Celestia was wearing a cloak, she thought it was one of those kidnappers, but Celestia smiled and replied that everything was fine. Rena wanted to answer something, but Celestia interrupted her and asked her not to worry. Celestia looked at Rena, who was in the cell. The girl looked terrible, she was very exhausted. Celestia was sure that she had had a hard time. But Rena is from a noble family. Celestia thinks that the girl was not given much to eat. When Celestia saw the other people in the cell, she felt so sorry for them. Celestia pulled herself together because she urgently needed to rescue Rena and then bring the plot back to normal and finish this plot branch. Suddenly, Rena asked Celestia how she got here. Celestia replied that she would tell him later, and then said that now she urgently needed to be taken out of the cage. Rena was shocked that Celestia came to save her, and of course, Celestia will save Rena with the power of the book. Suddenly, Celestia remembered something. Celestia remembered that her original goal was only to save Rena, which is why she came here, but due to the conversation she overheard, she learned that the criminals were aware of when Delquis would arrive. If he just pulled Rena out and left, the criminals would escape before he arrived, so Celestia needed to hold them off. But what to do with Rena? Celestia thinks that Rena can be hidden somewhere nearby, but leaving her alone is dangerous. But going together won't work either. It's too risky. Suddenly, someone grabbed the cage and started making noise. The man asked Celestia if she was really going to save Rena. The man also asks what about them. Celestia understood that if she freed everyone, history could change, and they wouldn't get far anyway and would be captured again. Celestia explains to the man that if everyone is freed, they might be replaced, so the princess will first save Rena and then return for everyone. The man asked Celestia if she was not going to save him, and then he set the conditions that if the girl did not save him, he would scream. Celestia understands that she needs to urgently rewrite the text of the book, otherwise she won't be able to save Rena. And so, the girl got ready and was already getting ready to rewrite the text. The man continued to shout to be released immediately. Suddenly, the man reached out and knocked the feather out of Celestia's hands. Celestia was horrified that she was not allowed to rewrite the book. And then the feather fell from Celestia's hands. But the feather didn't just fall, it fell into the cage. The feather fell into the cage so badly that it couldn't even be pulled out. The man shouted from his cage that they were planning an escape. Rena ordered the man to calm down, and Celestia realized that the situation was getting out of control. Celestia took the book in her hands and told Rena that she would come for it later. But suddenly Celestia was captured and not allowed to escape. The kidnappers don't understand how Celestia managed to escape from the cage, so they drag her back. The The girl was shocked that her plan failed so quickly because of one prisoner who called the guards. Celestia understands that that prisoner is such a vile guy, but the people she sat with before were just angels. But the princess did not become discouraged because she needed to get out. Having dealt with the chains, Celestia stood up from the chair to which she was chained. Celestia understands that she could simply cut the door down, but the girl also understands that then there would be noise. The guards would come running, and the girl would not be able to cope with them all, and the book would be useless without a pen. But if the princess goes back for the feather, that prisoner will start screaming again. Suddenly, Celestia heard sounds outside the door and tensed. The stranger approached Celestia's door. The man looks into the room through the bars and does not see the princess there. Opening the door, the man enters the princess's room, which is hidden around the corner. Suddenly, Celestia attacked a stranger who entered her cell. The princess holds the man tightly so that he cannot escape. Celestia looks at the stranger and wonders why he came into her cell. The man asks Celestia to let him go, and the girl asks why she should let him go. Suddenly, the man turned to face Celestia, and as it turned out, it was Zeno. Of course, the princess recognized him. Zeno smiled at the girl and admitted that she not only wields a sword well, but is also strong in hand-to-hand combat. Celestia asks the man what he is doing here and how can she not suspect him after this. The man replies that he is not guilty of anything. It just so happens that the princess always ends up in the same place where he is. Zeno smiled at Celestia and asked if his face could lie. Celestia resigned herself and then asked Zeno if he had a feather, and the man replied that he had one. The princess smiled and took it, and then tells the man that if he really wants her to believe him, he will have to help her. Zeno doesn't understand what Celestia is getting at. Meanwhile, the attackers, who also did not waste time. The kidnappers were playing cards, and one of them asked if they were leaving in a couple of hours. The man says that it's so exciting, because just a little bit more and they will be insanely rich, but his friend replies that he lost almost everything in the game. The man happily replies that he was poor and became rich. Suddenly, the man fell silent, and the guard asked why he was silent. It was his turn now. The man asks if he heard anything. The guard replies that he should not waste time, and if he loses, then he should accept it with honor. Suddenly, someone ordered the kidnappers to drop their weapons, because they were surrounded. As it turned out, these were knights who surrounded the castle, and they also ordered them to surrender, otherwise there would be no mercy. The attackers were scared because they didn't expect to be caught today. Meanwhile, the guard who ran to the boss. Having burst into the boss's room, where he was, the guard came to tell him the terrible news. The boss asks what happened because he wanted to rest a little, and the guard tries to tell the boss something. The guard tells the boss that the Imperial Knights found them, but the man was horrified by this. Meanwhile, the knights and the kidnappers were fighting with each other. Some of the attackers were already lying on the floor, while one was desperately fighting with the knight. At that time, other knights who opened the cells in which there were innocent people. The knight shouted to the people to run quickly to the exit to save themselves. At that time, another knight who fought with one of the kidnappers. The kidnapper tries to fight off the knight's attack so that he does not get hurt. The man had seen a lot in his life, but fighting openly with Imperial Knights was too much. Suddenly, the kidnapper saw a guy who caught a fight between the knight and the kidnapper. Suddenly, the man grabbed the guy and, smiling, told the knight that if he came closer, the guy would die. The knight froze in place because he did not know what to do in such a situation. The man orders the knight to step back before anyone gets hurt. But suddenly, Celestia stabbed the attacker in the back with her sword, who certainly didn't expect it. The guy immediately moved away from the attacker and looked at Celestia with fear. The guy went to Celestia and thanked her for saving him. Celestia smiled and told the victim to run away from here. Celestia watched with a smile as the boy ran away from this place. But suddenly, the princess heard steps in her direction and immediately understood who was approaching her. Celestia summoned her weapons to fight the intruders. But when Celestia turned around, she saw an intruder standing behind her who wanted to attack her, but Zeno stood behind him and stopped him. The guard fell to the floor while Celestia looked at Zeno. The girl smiled at Zeno and admitted to him that he was a good fighter. Zeno answers whether it is true and then says that he was wondering why she called him. The man also asked Celestia if she really saw a hidden talent in him, but the princess did not answer the man's questions. But Celestia is glad that everything is going according to plan, and Rena was taken out, and almost all the residents were also saved. The princess didn't even think that everything would go so smoothly, because in reality, these Imperial Knights are just an illusion. The real knights are still far away and will not arrive soon, so it will not be possible to summon them here using the book. But this trick was enough for the criminals to believe that they had already arrived. So Celestia wrote the contents of the book so that the criminals and hostages would see the illusion of the guards' arrival. Some of them collapsed from fear, and the rest were neutralized by Celestia and the plan was simply to create panic. But it turned out that the girl had a good fighter at her side. Now, Celestia and Zeno only need to catch the leader, and that will be the end of it. At that time, the leader and the villain, who leave their lair. The attacker asks the boss if they are doing the right thing by abandoning the others. The boss replies that if they get caught, they're done for. So if a man wants to be a hero, he should go himself. The attacker did not respond to the boss, but he realized that he would not be a hero. The attacker holds a bag in his hands and follows the leader, who should lead him to the exit. Suddenly, the leader and the attacker came to the right place. As it turned out, the chief had long ago made a hole in the wall through which one could escape. And it was already dawn, which meant that the ship had arrived for them. The boss understands that it's good that he prepared escape routes in advance, but the plan fell through and he'll have to lie low. But suddenly, the head crashed into something or someone's forehead. The boss covered the sore spot with his hand and didn't understand what he had hit. But when the boss raised his head, he saw Celestia, who smiled at him and asked if the boss was in a hurry with his subordinate somewhere. And behind the princess stood Zenon, smiling contentedly. And after a couple of minutes, Zeno and Celestia captured the boss and his subordinate. Celestia sighed heavily, realizing that they were finally over. Suddenly, the princess looked at Zeno, smiling at him. She thanked him and also said that she could not have managed without him. Zeno smiled at Celestia, telling her that he was glad to help. Suddenly, Celestia asked what the man's name was, because she didn't know his name, because they had never met. Suddenly, the leader started banging his head on the ground and screaming that this shouldn't have happened. Celestia looked at the leader, who shouted that he had predicted that the knights should arrive no earlier than dawn. Some time ago, in a bar, where quite a few people were sitting, drinking drinks and discussing something heatedly. The boss's friend sat down next to him and asked how he was and what he was doing. The boss replies that everything is small, a robbery here, a robbery there, and then he asks his friend how he is doing. The friend replied that he had recently hit the jackpot, and the boss asked how he did it. The acquaintance pointed to one table and asked if he saw that person at the table. The boss answered that it was some kind of tramp. The man said that it was not a tramp, but a fortune teller, and the fortune teller had also helped him many times, and that's how he earned a decent amount of money. The boss thought about his friend's words and even decided to approach that table. So the boss turned to this fortune teller. The predictions really came true, as if he saw the future. Gradually, the boss began to resort to his advice more and more often, and earn more and more. Eventually, he conceived this case with the kidnapping. It was supposed to become the main success of his life. The man does not understand why it did not work out now because he did everything as the fortune teller said. Celestia became curious and ordered the boss to tell her more about this fortune teller and who he was. But suddenly the princess got a headache. Because of the headache, Celestia's vision began to blur. At that time, the crown prince, who came on horseback to lead the attack operation, the prince dismounted from his horse and was about to enter the criminal's lair to deal with them. The man looks towards the criminal's lair and is a little shocked by what he sees. After all the criminals were neutralized, and they were still lying tied up and unconscious. People were happy that they were finally saved and could continue living a peaceful life. Suddenly, the girl saw the crown prince, who arrived to them with knights. The girl points to the crown princess and tells the people that he has arrived, and they admit that the man helped them. The people surrounded the crown prince and began to thank him because he saved their lives. Delkis looked at the knight, who himself did not really understand what had happened. The crown prince ordered the knights to split up and search this lair, and they also need to evacuate the civilians. Delkis understands that someone has gotten ahead of them. Although Delkis entrusted the investigation to that guy, he certainly wouldn't have gotten involved in something like that on his own. Delkis does not understand who could have saved those people. Suddenly, a girl approached the prince and wanted to tell him something. The girl asks if he knows where the pink-haired knight is because she would like to thank her for saving her. Suddenly, people remembered that night and began to say that they would like to thank her for saving them. The people are so happy that the pink-haired knight kept her promise and saved them. Delkis doesn't understand what kind of knight with pink hair people are talking about because there is no such person among his people. Suddenly, Celestia woke up and immediately opened her eyes. Celestia placed her hand on the bed and sighed heavily. Sitting up, Celestia wonders where she is. Suddenly, the man tells Celestia that she is in her chambers, and the princess asks who he is. Celestia asks what he is doing in his room. Zeno laughed and asks the girl if she really doesn't remember anything. Zeno tells Celestia that she suddenly lost consciousness, so he brought her here. Celestia thanked Zeno because he helped her out, and the man smiled and replied that it was nothing. This is the first time this has happened to the girl, and she doesn't understand why she passed out. Suddenly, Zeno says that the girl passed out due to depletion of magical energy. Celestia looked at Zeno and didn't understand what he was talking about. The man tells Celestia that due to the sudden release of magic in large quantities, there is a serious strain on the body. The princess asks Zeno if she really used so much magic, and the man confirms the girl's words. The financier family's sword summoning magic uses a small amount of magical power, only at the moment of activation. In other words, even if Celestia doesn't recall the sword for a long time, the magic power will not be wasted. Zeno thinks that Celestia was using magic for something else, and in large quantities. Celestia asked Zeno how she knew her family's magic so well, and the princess also said that she had never used any other magic except summoning the sword. Celestia doesn't understand what else Zeno is talking about, and the princess also doesn't understand how she could have spent all her magical powers. Zeno asks if this is true, and then says that the pen he lent to Celestia still contains powerful magic. Suddenly, Celestia realized something that shocked her. Zeno smiled and asked the girl if she really remembered something. Celestia realized that the power of the book uses magical power. Celestia also realized that if she ran out of them, the book would become useless. Celestia wonders what would have happened if she hadn't inhabited Celestia's body. Previously, Celestia used the book's power little by little, but this is the first time Celestia has used it on so many people at once, and now the princess understands why she lost consciousness. Celestia had no idea that she was wasting magical power. Even God had not warned her about it. Zeno tells Celestia that it's late, so he'll go because he understands that the girl is tired. Celestia asks Zeno to wait because he helped her so much and she didn't even thank him. The man admits that he was waiting for her to wake up to ask something. Zeno also says that he understands that Celestia does not yet know the whole truth, and the man also says that they will sort it out with gratitude at the next meeting. And so the man said goodbye to Celestia and left her room. Celestia was shocked when Zeno told her that they would meet again. Celestia doesn't understand why she would cross paths with some nameless character, and he was kind of strange. But the girl still became interested in how and when she could meet him. But then Celestia forgot about meeting with Zeno and climbed back into bed. The princess smiled and understood that since the story had already ended successfully, today she could just relax. And then it got dark outside, night fell. It was quiet in Celestia's courtyard, as almost everyone was still asleep. But the maids who were cleaning the castle corridor were not sleeping. Katya asked her friend if Celestia had really returned. Katya also says that Celestia left the house without warning anyone and went somewhere again. Sasha replies that even Arlene doesn't say anything, so they can only guess. Sasha says that maybe Celestia went there, but Katya asked where. Sasha suggests that Celestia could have gone to that fortune teller because they say that he can look into your future. The girl also says that suddenly the princess wanted to know her future. Katya replies that Celestia already has everything, and then asks that if the princess has everything, then why should she get involved with some shady characters? Sasha nevertheless agreed with her friend, and then says that there are so many rumors about that fortune teller now. They even reached her, so she thought about it. While Katya and Sasha were talking, suddenly a stranger approached them. The man called Sasha and Katya, who were seriously scared because they were gossiping here and they might have just been caught. The maids turned to face the stranger and asked whether he had called them or not. As it turned out, it was Zeno, who smiled at the maids and said that their conversation was very interesting, so he asked them to tell him about it too. When Arlene saw the brooch, she immediately noticed how beautiful it was. The maid asks Celestia if this is the same brooch that the crown prince personally gave her. Celestia confirms Arlene's words, saying that it is so touching that he gave it to her for the princess's debut. Arlene says she's absolutely stunning, but Celestia realizes that Arlene is happier about the brooch than she is. When Delcas gave Celestia this brooch, she realized that her debut was very close, which only made her more anxious. Celestia understands that the debut is the most important event of the novel, so she needs to be more careful. In the original version of the novel, Layla, thanks to Zenin's support, was able to talk to Delkis, and their first meeting was successful. But after the plagiarist made his changes, Layla never approached Delkis. Their meeting took place. Instead, there was a scene with Zeno, who was supposed to just help her, and the girl gets angry every time she remembers it. Therefore, Celestia needs to be as collected as possible and, using the power of the book, return the plot to the right path. Even if Celestia has to pit them against each other, she will do it. But suddenly, Celestia remembered that she had already met the main characters, Delkis and Layla. But for some reason, Celestia has never seen Zenon, a minor character, although it's not surprising, since he is a wandering magician. But Celestia thinks that she definitely needs to see Zeno at the debut. Arlene smiled at Celestia and said that she would carefully keep this brooch until the day of her debut. Celestia smiled at Arlene and thanked her for her concern. Suddenly, Arlene became worried because she wanted to tell Celestia something. But pulling herself together, Arlene tells Celestia that the carriage is already ready, so the maid can prepare the princess for departure at any time. Celestia doesn't understand what she needs to prepare for and where to go. Arlene doesn't understand why Celestia suddenly became silent and doesn't answer. The room became quiet, because it seemed the girls didn't understand each other. Celestia realizes that something needs to be done about this silence. Celestia began to pretend that she understood what the maid meant. The princess slammed her hands on the table and said that she was just about to leave. Celestia asks Arlene to help her get ready. Hearing the princess's request, the maid smiled. Arlene says she'll help now. Celestia smiled, realizing that if she said now that she didn't know what it was about, it would be suspicious. But the princess was wondering where exactly she should go. Soon, Celestia arrived at the cemetery. The princess began to walk around the cemetery to find the right place. Celestia walked past several graves, trying to find the one she needed. And so, the girl found the right place. As it turned out, today was the anniversary of the death of Celestia's mother. Celestia stood quietly, looking at her mother's grave. Holding the flowers in her hands, the girl began to feel strange. Celestia leaned over and was about to place the flowers. But suddenly, the princess noticed something near the grave. There was already one flower lying next to the grave. The girl realized that Delkis had already come to the cemetery. When Celestia was still very young, her mother died during the Revolutionary War. Since then, Celestia often visited her mother's grave. No one else in the financier family did this. But one day when Celestia went to visit her mother's grave, the princess saw a complete stranger there. Celestia was shocked when she saw him. The princess then saw Delkis, who had lost his older brother in the same war and had become the crown prince. Delkis stood at the grave of Celestia's mother and cried sincerely, as if it were his personal loss. It was then that Celestia fell in love with Delkis, and from that moment on, Celestia's feelings gradually grew into an obsessive passion. Celestia carefully placed flowers on Delkis's brother's grave, and then the princess approached her mother's grave. Celestia began to pray because she wanted everything to be okay with her mother in the next world. Opening her eyes, the princess decided to read what was written on her mother's monument. On the monument it was written that blood, he read with nobility, ascends to heaven, transforming into immortal life, and one day fate will bring you together again. Suddenly, the girl felt that her hand was wet, and when she lifted it, she saw that there was water on it. And then Celestia realized that she had started to cry unconsciously. The girl immediately began to wipe away the tears rolling down her cheeks. But it didn't help, and Celestia started crying again. The girl doesn't understand why she's standing there and crying. Suddenly, the girl put her hand on her heart. The girl knows that she is not the real Celestia, but she does not understand why she is crying. But the girl thought that it was Celestia's longing that resonated in her, because the memories of Celestia, whose body the writer occupied, surfaced when she saw her mother's grave. This is how the girl visited her mother's grave, and several days passed. The long-awaited morning of Celestia's debut arrived. The maids run all over Celestia's room, helping her get ready. Now one of the maids came running with boxes in her hands. The maids were bustling about, and only Arlene was not worried as she brushed Celestia's hair. Arlene combed Celestia's hair carefully so as not to harm her. Celestia is worried, sitting near the mirror. Suddenly, Arlene asked Celestia if she was worried. The princess answered that she was a little, but in fact she was so worried that she did not even close her eyes. Celestia thinks that it is because she prepared so much that now she is afraid to make even one mistake, and the girl also feels like she is about to take an important exam. Arlene says that she is so touched. Celestia asks what the maid is so touched about. Arlene answers Celestia that just recently she was still such a baby and has already grown so much, and today is her debut, the princess reassured the maid. Having finished with her hair and clothes, Celestia says that she is leaving already. The maid asked her to be more careful. Suddenly, Celestia handed a letter to Arlene. Arlene opened the letter and began to read it carefully. Arlene was shocked by the contents of the letter. Celestia tells Arlene that she has hopes for her, to which the maid replies that she should not worry and have fun because everything will be done as it should be. The princess, hearing the maid's words, understood that then everything was fine. It was time to move on. After all, it's time to set this story straight. And so Celestia's debut begins, to which all the nobility has gathered. Celestia walked into the ballroom, her dramatic appearance instantly capturing the attention of the guests. Those who wanted to get closer to her immediately approached her with compliments and congratulations. Others who consider Celestia a villain only whisper behind her back. Celestia calmly thanks everyone for the compliments and congratulations. Having finished the greetings, Celestia took 10 steps forward. The princess took 1 step, 2, 3, 4. Celestia took the 5th step. The intruder saw it and already understood when he would come out and ruin the holiday. Celestia carefully approached the waitress who was standing with champagne. The offender saw this, and his eyes lit up, realizing that now he would go out and ruin the holiday. And so, Celestia took the 9th step, and the attacker pushed the waitress with champagne. The waitress runs straight towards Celestia. The crowd behind them is in shock and wondering what will happen now. And now Celestia is about to take the 10th final step. Celestia approaches the waitress and takes the last, 10th step. The princess dodged the drinks which were about to spill on her dress. Suddenly, Celestia grabs the waitress by the waist to keep her from falling to the floor. Celestia also catches a tray of champagne to prevent the glasses from breaking. Celestia holds the waiter, just as she holds the tray of champagne she was carrying earlier. Celestia easily avoided trouble, which earned the respect of the guests. Celestia sighed because she had succeeded, but the princess was so afraid that she might make a mistake. When the girl ran into the room to rest, she immediately lay down on the sofa, sighing heavily. Finally, Celestia has time to catch her breath, because the girl is always busy, but today she is the main character, and it is 100 times more tiring. Celestia lies on the couch, resting from the intruder. But then the princess realizes that she won't be able to rest, because soon she will have her first dance with Delcus. So far, everything is going according to plan, but for some reason Celestia still feels uneasy. And then Celestia realizes that she is afraid of meeting Delcus. The girl keeps telling herself that everything is fine, but she is scared when she sees Delcus with young Wu's face, and she also doubts that she will be able to remain calm. Suddenly, Celestia is distracted from her bad thoughts by a knock. The princess came to her senses and asked who had come. As it turned out, it was Layla who apologized to Celestia because she had scared her. Layla tells Celestia that she looked very worried. Celestia asks Layla not to pay attention to this because the princess is just thinking. Layla tells Celestia that even though she doesn't know what happened, but then Layla says that she wants Celestia to have a happy day today because she is the heroine of today's holiday. Celestia was embarrassed by such words. Layla immediately began to apologize because she said too much and did not want to impose. Celestia realizes that Layla knows that the princess will soon dance with Delcus, but Layla still sincerely wishes her happiness, and then the princess realizes that she should not back down, so the girl thanked Layla for helping her calm down. And now it's time to dance with Delcus. Celestia understands that even if Delcus looks at her with the cold expression of a dead fiancé, she will not allow herself to retreat. And so, the princess opened her eyes and looked at Delcus. Delcus smiled at Celestia and extended his hand to her. Celestia dances with Delcus, but the princess does not understand what is happening. Celestia realizes that Delcus's movements have become softer, and he doesn't look as cold as before. Suddenly, Delcus tells Celestia that this hairstyle suits her. The princess thanks him for the compliment, but then the crown prince says that the brooch he gave her suits the princess. The girl thanks the crown prince for the compliment. Celestia doesn't understand what the sudden flow of compliments is about because Delcus can't stand her because of the engagement, and the princess also thinks that the crown prince either resigned himself or ate something wrong. And then Delcus called Celestia, and she responded. Suddenly, the crown prince asked Celestia what the kidnapping incident was all about. Celestia was frightened and answered Delcus that she did not understand what was going on. Delcus smiled at Celestia and noted that she refused again. The Crown Prince also says that all the hostages then spoke of one girl with pink hair who helped them escape. Delcus notes that there is only one person in the Empire with this hair color. Delcus also says that there is one person with such fencing skills. Celestia was worried and replied that many people fit the description. Delcus says that he thought Celestia would say that, and then he says that it's strange. During the search they found a clean, expensive feather, not at all suitable for such a place. Delcus holds a feather in his hand, not realizing that it is in the cage, and then Rena sees this feather. And then Delcus says that they already found out that this is Celestia's feather because one of the girls told everything, and the man asks Celestia not to pretend. Celestia realized that the girl had blabbed everything to Rena. Delcus asks Celestia if she understands how serious it is to impersonate a knight of the Imperial Guard. Celestia doesn't know what to answer because she thought she had hushed everything up, but then this happened. Delcus looks at Celestia, who has no answer to his question. Suddenly Delcus smiled and said that it was a joke and he did not intend to blame her. And so the dance between Celestia and Delcus continues. Celestia literally whirls around in a dance with the Crown Prince. The princess is also a little confused by Delcus's actions, and so the dance between Celestia and Delcus was over. The guests admired the dance that Celestia and Delcus prepared. Therefore, the guests clapped smilingly for Celestia and Delcus, and during the dance, Delcus confessed to the princess that she surprised him with her actions. After the dance, Celestia and Delcus went to their places. Celestia stood near the wall adjusting her dress. After finishing the dress, Celestia began to think about Delcus's words, because he said that he needed to leave urgently, but he would be back soon. Celestia doesn't understand what just happened during the dance. The princess was shocked that Delcus smiled at her. The Crown Prince's smile surprised Celestia so much that she became embarrassed. Suddenly, Celestia slapped herself in the face. The princess understands that she can't, even if Delcus looks like Young Woo. She can't have feelings for him. He also has to be Layla's boyfriend. Celestia doesn't understand why Delcus behaved like that, but suddenly the princess found a solution to this problem, and the solution turned out to be that Delcus himself was to blame for just going and smiling. Suddenly, the princess heard a whisper and decided to find out what was going on there. The girls are discussing that Zeno has come to the ball and will now go look at him. Celestia was shocked because Zeno came to the party, which means that the main characters are finally assembled. Celestia realizes that she also wants to see Zeno as soon as possible. But suddenly, Celestia remembered that Delcus asked to wait where he was. And then Celestia thinks about what to do: wait for Delcus or the desire to see what the second main character looks like. Of course, the desire to see what the second main character looks like won out. Celestia will only take a quick glance and then return to Delcus. And so, a couple of minutes later, Celestia ran to the right place to see the face of the second hero. Celestia looks at the man's back and wonders if this is the second hero. And suddenly, Celestia saw the face of the second main character. Celestia was shocked when she saw a familiar face. The princess could not believe that this young man was Zeno. After all, Zeno should have looked completely different. And then Celestia realized that Zeno had noticed her. The man approached Celestia and introduced himself as Zenon de Senecio Argafo, the owner of the Magic Tower. Celestia doesn't know what to say to Zeno, but he asks the princess to be herself next to him. The princess tells Zeno that she is glad to see him, and he smiles at this. Suddenly, Zeno noticed something about Celestia's appearance. Zeno put his hand on Celestia's cheek and asked her why she was so red. Celestia quickly removed Zeno's hand from her face. Zeno smiled at Celestia and asked if she had fallen in love with his beauty. Celestia denies it. Zeno asks not to be shy because it's cute. Celestia is shocked that this is the same Zeno, because she wrote him as a gentle, polite secondary character. Suddenly, Zenon approached Celestia, but she did not understand what it was about. And then Zenon invites Celestia to dance, and she asks if she wants to dance with him. Suddenly, Celestia heard a familiar voice and turned to look at it. Layla ran to Celestia and hugged her. The princess was in shock. Layla says that she wanted to eat delicious desserts with her and asks the girl to hurry. Layla hugs Celestia. Zeno holds her hand, and Selena herself understands that something is wrong here. Celestia realizes that she needs to remember everything from the very beginning, because she acted strictly according to the book and danced specifically so that Layla would see Delquis. Celestia realizes that the problem is that she was confused and didn't check if Layla noticed him. The princess looks at Layla and thinks that everything is probably okay, but the girl can't ask directly. Celestia imagined asking Layla if she had seen the princess dancing with Delquis. But since Zeno is here, it means Layla has received consolation. Now, Layla just needs to gather up her courage and approach Delquis on the terrace, then their meeting will definitely take place. And then Celestia thought that suddenly everything was really going according to a dangerous scenario. If Layla and Zenon stay together, the story will be plagiarized. Celestia understands that then Zeno's line will begin, but this definitely cannot be allowed, and using the power of editing text is also impossible. The magic will run out and the girl may faint, so she will have to do everything herself. Suddenly, Celestia began to tell Layla how amazing the sky was today, and the girl also suggested that Layla go to the terrace. When Layla heard about Celeste's proposal, she started thinking. Celestia was waiting for Layla's answer, on which everything depended. And then Layla took Celestia by the hand and ran with her to the terrace to eat desserts. But before that, she said goodbye to Zenon. Zeno was shocked at how quickly Layla ran away with Celestia. Zeno chuckled and admitted that Layla had beaten him to it. A couple of minutes later, Celestia and Layla were on the terrace, and Layla was trying desserts. Layla smiled at Celestia and recommended her to try macarons. The princess said that she would definitely try, but did not understand how she got into such a situation. But first of all, the princess needs to find out the necessary information. Suddenly, Celestia confesses to Layla that she wanted to ask her something. The girl asks what, exactly. Celestia asked Layla if she and Zeno had met before. Celestia confirmed this and admitted that they used to be friends. The princess already knows this and already thinks that she asked too vaguely. Layla admits that Zenon is constantly traveling. He was even nicknamed a wandering bug, so they haven't seen each other for a long time, but Layla is glad that they met again. Suddenly, Layla asked Celestia how she met Zenon. Because she was surprised by their acquaintance, Celestia replies that they just accidentally crossed paths before, but the girl only found out today that he is the head of the magic tower. Layla smiled at Celestia and admitted that she was simply surprised that Celestia and Zeno were talking like old friends. Celestia understands that since Layla and Zenon talked, it means that Zenon definitely supported Layla, and it is clear from her that she is now in a great mood. Celestia understands that all that remains is to organize a meeting with Delquis, and best of all on the terrace. Suddenly, Layla says that the plate is empty. And then Celestia stood up and said that she would bring more desserts. Layla was shocked that Celestia would go get desserts, so she said she would bring them herself. Celestia replies that Layla has arranged such a pleasant atmosphere on the terrace. I simply have to thank her, so the princess asks Layla to wait until she brings dessert. And so, night fell. The ceremony was still going on in Celestia's palace. When Celestia left the terrace, she immediately ran to look for Delquis to bring him to Layla. Celestia thinks that Delquis will scold her for leaving without permission. And so, Celestia goes Delquis throughout the palace, but where not? Celestia was wondering where she should look for Delquis when she suddenly heard her name being called, and the girl immediately turned around. The waiter sighs heavily and says that he has been looking for her everywhere. The princess asked what happened. The waiter said that the crown prince ordered her to find the girl and bring her to him. When Celestia heard the waiter's words, she immediately followed her to Delquis. Celestia thinks how good it is that she was found and not had to look for Delquis. When the waiter took Celestia to her seat, the princess went to him herself, and the waiter left. Celestia realizes that she ended up on the terrace on the opposite side, so it would have been better if the princess had brought Layla right away. Celestia looks at Delquis and thinks about how to lure him to Layla. When Delquis heard footsteps in his direction, he turned around, and seeing Celestia, he said that they had finally met. Celestia apologizes and says it's so noisy in here that it's hard to concentrate. The princess asked Delquis if he had settled his affairs, but Delquis remained silent. Celestia doesn't understand why Delquis is silent and already thinks that she has made him very angry. Suddenly, Delquis says that he has long wanted to tell Celestia something. Delquis looks at Celestia, wondering how to express himself correctly. Pulling himself together, the crown prince says that Celestia has always treated him well, even too well, but Celestia does not understand why the man is talking about this so seriously. Delquis admits that he ignored this, because he was sure that Celestia was really as evil as they said. The crown prince admits that it was stupid, because he himself was stuck in childhood memories, and the man also says that Celestia is a good person, since she wanted to secretly deal with the kidnapping case. Celestia is shocked by Delquis's words, because she would never have thought that he would say that, and then Delquis says that he wants to fix their relationship. Celestia was so surprised by this statement that she didn't even hear what Delquis said next. Now, the girl understood why Delcus was so kind to her. Even though the girl had moved into Celestia's body, one couldn't just forget about one's first love. After all, Layla loves Delcus, so he can't be the first to give up. Suddenly, Delcus reminds him that he had to leave earlier on business and tries to get something out of his pocket. When the Crown Prince took out something, Celestia was surprised. As it turned out, it was Celestia's feather, which Layla had given her. Delcus says that he felt that this thing was important to Celestia, so he decided to return it personally. Celestia smiled and thanked the Crown Prince because she no longer hoped to return the feather. Delcus smiled at Celestia because he was glad that he made her happy in this way. Delcus tells Celestia that he hopes they will continue to get along well.